Let's click the cloud server. We are recording. Fantastic. So we'll hand over to Ed. Ed, you've got you should have screen sharing responsibilities.
Yes, sure.
I'll leave it to you to run with it and present who you are and what you do and what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, I did have the quickest of questions. How much time do you want me to rattle on for?
Much as you want, mate. I know you can
Which
talk.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Just walk through the case study, and people will have some questions now and again, and we'll just go. And at the end, we can have a bit of a Q&A session as well. Generally, we like to wrap the whole session up by 9 o'clock. So half an hour, something like that might give you something to aim for, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah. So hi everyone, my name's Ed. I've been working in the industry just over 6 years now. And started off as a junior. I actually didn't do anything to do with like UX or design at university. So I kind of came to things from further afield actually. I started working in a call center somewhere, got made redundant, and knew they had like a digital team based nearby. So I somehow found my way into this office and got a junior UX role, and kind of the rest is history. So I started off shadowing people really. And then after a year of that, got into contracting, and that's kind of how it all got started. But yeah, the thing I want to talk to you guys about today is a piece of software I worked on that went live this year. So essentially the reason why this case study I think will be quite interesting for you guys is it's basically looking at an existing service, identifying what's wrong with that service, and building out something new to replace said service. But it's kind of the steps that you do along the way that allow you to do that in a proper evidence driven way, and actually trying to find the value rather than just replace something for replacing sake, actually replace it with something more effective that a lot of people are going to be using. And it's been a while since I checked the usage, but we're kind of getting probably about 5,000 people a day using it. It's a bus timetable tool. So I will look to just share this screen that we have. So sorry, forgive me, it's been a while since I've used Zoom. Share screen. There we go. Share. Now, can everyone see that?
Yes, mate. All good.
Yep. Okay. Right. I'll put it in presentation mode. So yeah, this is a report that I created for TFGM. That's the company I work for. And this was looking at the current digital solution that they had. So it was basically a bus timetable tool. So this kind of outlines the key steps in the journey, which was search for service. So in this example here, it's searching for the 263 bus. I picked this bus because it's one I used to get as a kid when I was back many years ago when I used to go to school around that way. Now immediately, you can probably already identify some of the issues here. Does anyone want to take a guess at what an issue might be here in terms of using a timetable on mobile? Not a trick question, I promise.
Well, it doesn't fit for stars.
Well, yeah, this is it. So because it's a matrix, and what I mean by that is like basically just a giant box, you have to scroll sideways. As you can see in the final picture on the right, when you scroll sideways, you actually lose the name of the stop. So if you think about it, look at where the times start. The times start, we're using the weekday, for example, here. The times start at around 5 a.m. So most people are getting the bus about 8 or 9 or, around that window. They have to scroll across 3 hours, basically. And by which point, they've lost the name of their stop. So you have to be it's really hard to pick out the time on the right-hand side if you haven't memorized exactly which block you're in. So straight away, you can kind of see some of the issues with this particular tool. So this has been in place for a while. Sorry, go ahead, Giles.
Did you actually take the existing mobile site here and put it into a wireframe to just to demonstrate its limitations?
Sorry, say again. Did I do that?
Is this a wireframe of the existing tool?
Yeah. So this is basically I took these screens
back and put it into a user-based wireframe to demonstrate its pitfalls, basically.
Yeah, essentially. So I always think it's good whenever you work on something, it's like take screen grabs, because obviously there'll be a point where the technology moves on and then you go back and you have no record of it. So I thought it's great to have this as a starting point. And like you say, put it into mobile, because a lot of companies still think desktop first. And like on desktop, this ain't bad. This is not too bad at all. But our mobile usage is around 80%, as it is for most providers these days in whatever industry really. So yeah, it was important to showcase it like this in the kind of the way that most users would see it, and then work out from there. So essentially I've highlighted some of the key issues here, just in a simple annotated format. So basically explaining here that stop names don't pin when scrolling. That's an issue. We start to have abbreviations. If you look at the left-hand side in the naming convention of these stops, you've got OS, OP, NR, and these go on and on and on. There's loads of different abbreviations. So if you think that the average reading age in Manchester is actually only about 6 years of age, I think it is now in Greater Manchester. So if you're starting to abbreviate things, and this is not necessarily consistent across like all of the communications that we put out, it's just giving more chance to confuse people. And again, it's one of the more interesting ones is the fact that if you look at the timetable type, it says it's weekdays, but Monday to Friday, Saturday to Sunday, they can all be different. So when you have a concept of weekdays and weekends, what that did was basically give people false information, because for a lot of buses, they might run the first 3 days the same for the start of the week, but then the Thursday, Friday is different. So if you're having just weekdays, you're actually missing out on an opportunity to give people the correct information. You might be supplying them with data that's, okay, this is what a typical week looks like, but there's never really a typical week because it changes and varies throughout the days, particularly when the bus providers change. So again, as I mentioned on the right-hand side, we have 80 different providers in Manchester buses. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is true. It's the reason it is that way is because there's a lot of people on like smaller routes, so they're heavily subsidised by the government. But you probably know the big ones like First, Arriva, Stagecoach, all of those. But that's important for people to know, because sometimes the same service, say you have like the 40 or something like that, it might for 3/4 of it be ran by Stagecoach, and then be ran by Diamond in the evening. So things like that can affect how people get the tickets, because if you have a ticket for Stagecoach, it won't work on Diamond, things like that. So there's other considerations. There's information that basically isn't being shown here, and that's, like I said before, different days where the service differs. Because if you looked at this like weekdays, if you'd never gotten that bus before and you got the timetable and it was just, oh, this is what all the weekdays are like, you might turn up on Friday and the bus service is different. So it's just a few different issues that we had with this current solution that we wanted to move on from.
It's in situ as well, isn't it? Because people could be at the bus stop with this open on their phone, expecting saying, "Well, the bus should be here right now," but it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Yeah. So it's like you say, because a lot of people, they might get it. Either they'll get it they'll look at the phone 5 minutes before they leave, just to confirm, or the day before sometimes, or like you say, as they're there, it could be supplying incorrect information, and this is why we felt we need to change it. Looking at print as well, so not just looking at what's there digitally, looking at what's there from a print perspective as well, to try and fill in any gaps there, is important, because that's kind of the overall customer journey. It's not just the kind of digital customer journey. There's sometimes a wider element to it. In other industries, the wider element can sometimes be like a call center. So I always think for people to not just think of what's there on the screen, but what other interactions that the customers may have, whether they ring up and you might be missing part of the customer journey there by not speaking to people in the contact center. So yeah, I mean, this was interesting for me. So there's a few different types. Again, these aren't consistent. If you look here, there's different types of these printed solutions that, again, have their own issues. So I'll just highlight a couple of them here. And this is what, obviously, I presented this very deck back to the business. This is all like how I present my work in reality as well. So I wanted to get away from having to have a legend. So if you look at the right hand side, it says timetable notes. A timetable should be able to be understood without requiring like a legend which explains like the symbols, icons, abbreviations. If it can't be understood at first glance, then it's not. You should just change the design rather than accept a bad design and then have like a map legend that tells you what these things mean. They should be known immediately. And it kind of fits with one of the guidelines from the government digital service, which is intuitive software over comprehensive documentation. In English, that means make it easy and don't have it hard, and then supply like a how-to guide if you can help it. Some stuff you can't help it because it's that complicated, but where you can. So to get into more of the specifics, it's like we have a circle, a square, a smaller circle, an upward triangle, a downward triangle, and they all mean different things. They're all terminations, but terminations at different locations. And what that means is like if the bus ends early. So it's quite important to know because the bus ends early at different places. So I just, my criticism of this is that it's just not clear enough from, when you're looking at it. So I definitely didn't want to bring this into anything new that we were doing. I wouldn't want this to be kind of how it looked for us. We didn't want to have that, inherit those legacy problems. We wanted to move beyond them. And again, it's things like literally 99% of the buses are low floor. So having the disabled icon is starting to lose its pertinence, because the vast majority of buses are low floor. So we thought, well, we won't incorporate that. We'll put a notice when it's not low floor, which is extremely rare these days. There's been legislation that has made bus companies basically make all their services accessible now. So there's essentially that's an old animation that I left in. Here are kind of some of the things we pulled out that I wanted to bring in. So I set these principles against what we'd already established from looking at those solutions. So essentially, do we need to symbolize the low floor buses? Like I said, I brought all these talking points to the business. We shouldn't really use that classic timetable view, which is like a giant matrix, and then you just find your time within thousands of times. We didn't want to bring that across. Again, like I mentioned a second ago, don't bring a legend into it, where you have to basically have a menu over here to tell you all the information you're seeing over here and go back and forth. It should just be understood without the use of acronyms, things like that. We felt it was useful to potentially have the operator of the service for the reasons I mentioned before, i.e. ticketing, things like that. Avoid using those symbols and icons that don't really mean much. Just tell the user where it terminates. Don't try and be clever and have like little shapes that say different things. And again, like I said before, move away from any of those abbreviations. But obviously, some of this stuff is the limitations of print, so they were quite easily avoidable. Some of these things existed within the current solution, so that's why we had to kind of move away from it. If you just allow me to stop sharing my screen, I will get the next deck up, which is basically another part of the solution we looked at. But are there any questions in the meantime that anyone wants me to answer?
Can I just ask a quick one? When you went into, you said you knew there were flaws, and have you got existing feedback? Were you going off customer feedback already to say where the problems were? Did you have evidence from customers?
A lot of it was anecdotal, to be honest with you. TFGM, and it hasn't been great at establishing like massive lines of communications with the customers. So they know anecdotally from the call center that these things are issues. We didn't unfortunately have enough time to probably do as much investigation at the start as we wanted to, because we had an arbitrary delivery date, so we had to get a solution out quite quickly. So we started to do more of the customer research on the newer solution. But we did do a little bit of competitor and desk research to build that data. But yeah, not as much as I'd liked up front, but we knew it was a problem. But yeah, I think if we had like an additional 2-3 weeks on top of what we already had, I think that, again, budget was another thing. I think we definitely would have spoke to some customers, got the videos of people saying, "Oh, this isn't great," but it was more of a gut feeling thing initially. But
are you working on metrics to start with? So like a start and an end point of, I don't know, the percentage of people, and what's your kind of like return on investment in terms of how do you know that you've succeeded?
Well, for us, it was more the case that essentially the solution was going to be, they were coming to the end of the contract and they had a decision to make, whether they wanted to renew it and continue it or whether they wanted to go into a new direction. And we basically created this small alpha to do that, and went from there. So like I said, we did more tests of the solution side of it once we changed how the prototype looked and compared and contrasted. But it was purely anecdotal stuff really initially to start off with from the contact center. We knew it was broken and we knew that we had complaints, but we didn't have mounds of data to go off initially, unfortunately. But I think that if we were to look back and have a bit more time to do that, I think that's always a good area to spend your time in. So in an ideal world, yes, but this was more the kind of experience, gut feeling, under time and budget pressures. So we already knew that you could tell straight away that there were problems there, but they were more kind of, how could I describe it, cases of non-best practice as opposed to like people highlighting the issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Was there any other questions to start off with?
One thing I'd like to draw people's attention to is the simplicity of Ed's slides. I think this is the same presentation you presented at UX Crunch, I believe, and I remember
It's the same style of presentation. It's consistent. Mine was the contactless project that I presented at Crunch. Yeah. I didn't want to bore you with it again, Giles. I thought I'd go with something different.
I remember you presenting at the time, and I remember thinking how nice I liked your slides because they were simple. They were just
very kind.
I think that was really important. And again, you can see just the black and white. It's all about getting the information out. And what you were talking about with your not doing too many icons and not making the user work so hard to actually understand the application is exactly the same principle when you're putting presentations together. Not getting people distracted and making it too hard to understand the information that's put in front of them. One of the slides there was just simple typography and different weights and separated by a green line. Nice and easy, nice and clean. No irrelevant imagery that's distracting from the information you're trying to put across. So I think that's a good example of something to learn as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like UX and my own UX work. It's important.
You have to show. You've got to practice what you preach, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's come from a couple of things. It's come from just experience over time, learning that people often don't read too much on the slides, so you want to keep them really super lean. Also, it's easier if you establish like a font height and weight and those kind of principal slides, you can just copy it. You can just basically copy and paste your slide deck over and over again, and that's how I usually do it. I also think that you don't necessarily need to fill up, like keep some white space there. It's a big thing that people think they have to do, like, oh, there's loads of space, I need to fill it. You don't always need to fill the white space. It's actually often better to leave a bit.
Exactly, it's an old design principle, isn't it? Just because the space there doesn't mean you have to fill it.
For sure.
Let your information be focused upon and let your design breathe. That's such an important thing. We did a session a few weeks ago about presentations and that sort of thing, and we tapped on some nice programs to use for that sort of thing. And maybe we can pick your brains at the sort of programs you use later. But in the meantime,
no problem. Of course. Yeah, so I'd like to bring to the other side of things. I know we talked about customer research a second ago, but there's also an element of competitive research because we thought, well, why not do some benchmarking? Why not look at what everyone else is doing, and see if we can basically pinch any good ideas without having to pick up any bad ideas. Is kind of our way of doing things. So, like I said, without any further ado, benchmarking stuff. So this is what TfL do for their bus offerings. So. I found it a little bit difficult at times to go through, but it's fairly clean, to be honest with you. Again, you search for you start the service, you select a service. What's interesting is they straight away, if you look at the second slide at confirm service, they present the direction. So obviously, bus is going two directions, A to B, B back to A. So they present the direction at that point. And they then show you the stop map, so that's the third one, and you're encouraged to select that stop and then go straight from there, and then you can kind of see. So it's select a service, select a stop, and then get the timetables. But what's interesting is we actually face different things to them. So what I mean by that is they do Monday to Friday there, Saturday and Sunday. So they have grouped the timetables similarly to how we did, although we did weekends and weekdays. They've gone to an extra level of detail by having Saturday and Sunday split out. But because they have essentially a franchise model, what that means is they're allowed to push what's called SLAs, of service-led agreement. So what that means is if you look at the final phone screen on the right, they're able to say, right, buses, you must run every 10 to 14 minutes between the hours of 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. They can dictate that to their franchisees. Because we have 80 different bus providers, we can't stipulate that to them. We can't tell them that. They give us the timetables. So we don't have the leverage. So we couldn't actually do this even if we wanted to. But it was still a good example of, a best-in-class provider, but it's not necessarily an appropriate way of doing things for us. Particularly, we still needed to show the timetables. But again, it's just a good look to kind of, like I said, the best practice that's out there. So that's one of the providers. I think it's a
really good example there as well as to when external business requirements on a project can affect the ideal solution you might want to put out there. You have to work within the parameters of what you're given. Like you say, you look at things and you think, well, that's fantastic, but we can't actually use it that way. But it's nice to have it in the back of your mind because maybe you can try and adapt it at some point. But no, that's really nice.
Yeah, especially when the kind of core, not in this case, I want to use the competitor, but they're kind of not because they're not competing for Manchester, are they? But they kind of are a competitor in the sense that they're providing their citizens with a government service, and we kind of need to always look out for the best people in class that do that. And these are kind of the key things that I picked out that they do. So these are kind of, if we were to build a service entirely from scratch, maybe pick up a couple of these points, start with the service, select a stop, and I've used the word zip line to portray how the stop is looked. So it's rather than just a list of stops, they actually have like a zip line with dashes on it to kind of, symbolize the stops that you can go through and select there. And again, I will get to the point where I actually show this tool live as well, by the way. It won't all just be static slides, so don't worry. We'll do something more interactive in a moment. But yeah, these are the key elements that we picked out. But again, took a look at Mersey travel. So obviously that's around. Is that near your area then, Giles? You said something about Liverpool before, didn't you?
It is, yeah. That's Merseyrail. That's what I used to get into Liverpool every day.
There you go then, see? And this is, they've got that kind of old school look. And what I mean by that is, at the start I showed you how we'd originally gone about it with our provider, that matrix look where you've got the stops on the left and then you have all the times, forever, ultimate amount of scrolling going to the right hand side. So yeah, it's interesting. They still had that older look. They had a map view as well, where you can actually see the stops physically presented. They also allowed you to see the full timetable and download it at that point as well, which was another key feature we were looking at doing. They also present disruption information there as well. If you look at the bottom left, they actually gave you travel updates at this point. But that stuff we're dealing with on a different project, so we didn't really incorporate that too much. But you can kind of see again, they start by service. They allow you to see an operator. I know we mentioned before that that's something that we thought was useful to see, and Mersey Travel were doing that. They have a download PDF for the timetable. Interesting.
You can see an example there, just to draw everyone's attention, of hierarchy of colours. So you've obviously got the red is the alert. The yellow would be the helpful advice piece, or the actual, do a primary action, search.
Yeah, call to action. Yeah.
And then the green thing is, that's the helpful advice aspect. So something interesting to pick up on that from the way they present it. It's a nice way of looking at the colour hierarchy.
And that's another thing that is something that we're doing at TFGM, because they started with the website with a black background, and when you have a black background, you can't really do much of stuff like that. You have to then create a white background to put these kind of colours on top of it for it to work properly. So yeah, it's another kind of support for that. Like, colours contrast better off a white background. That's why you see a lot of companies now, a lot of them are going for white backgrounds, because there's just so much more you can do straight off the bat.
Accessibility is playing a huge part in that now as well.
Absolutely.
And the sort of thing you're doing here, this particular project. I mean, not just people with impairments in any way, shape or form, but just even, you're looking at your phone in the high street and it's pissing down the rain and you can't see stuff correctly. It's important to just have stuff nice and clear and simple, because again, think of the situation someone's going to be looking at this in. They might be in a rush, they might not have much time and that sort of thing, and or it might be quite patchy reception, and everything might be a bit pixelated if it's overloaded with graphics and that sort of thing. So yeah, nice and clean and white is certainly the way to go in this sort of thing.
Definitely, and to add to that, there's one of the when we select timetable type on the past solution of ours, it was actually capital letters, so it's capital letters for weekdays and weekends. If you capitalize an entire word, it's actually harder for certain people to read, because you don't get this kind of kerning of the letters. So that's another thing, for a quick tip for accessibility: try to stay away from using capitals, because when you equally size the letters, people with like slightly impaired vision, that they struggle to read it, whereas they might be able to read it if you actually just have it case sensitive. So that's another quick one to bear in mind. But yeah, the interesting thing here is they have a specific date picker. So if you looked at the ones, the previous two examples, so TFGM original and TFL, they went off supposed weekdays and weekends specifically, whereas these guys actually pick a date. Now, can anyone think of the advantages of picking a date? Bear in mind what I said at the start.
It changes on different days.
Exactly. So this is really helpful, because you're never giving anyone false information then. If you ask them to pick a day, the day is always correct. Whereas Monday and Tuesday might be different. If you class them all as the same weekday and then show Monday, but it's different on Tuesday, you're giving people false information, whereas these guys don't. And that was one of the things I really liked about what they did. Whilst I didn't like the matrix look, that's one little touch that they did from a data entry perspective that actually was better than TFL, and I thought would work better for our particular predicament, because we have those stringent timetables from those different providers. So yeah, it's a small thing, but it turns out being a big thing really. Transport for West Midlands, another one we looked at that I really liked as well. Again, it's the same sort of thing. Search for service, confirm the service, have a look at the services like stops, and then go from there. Again, they allowed you to choose a full timetable. They showed the zipline thing, and then you can essentially go from there and pick your departure time. Now, to me, it just felt like there was a lot of screens here. That was the thing that I didn't like about this. I felt like I was bouncing around a lot. So when I showed you the final design that we did, there was essentially less of that. But I did like it. I think it had the nice ideas, definitely. But the problem they have is a lot of the screens look the same as well to do different things. A lot of actions going on. It's probably a bit heavy, if anything, with all these chevrons and stuff like that. And I like the chevrons. We used them in our final design, but it's when they're kind of on doing similar things on different pages and kind of overly used was the problem. And they duplicated their zipline style. So if you look, you can select a stop from the original menu, but it looks like if you look at the top right hand side, and then you can select a stop later. It's kind of like the showing you, kind of encouraging you to do these different interactions at different stages rather than holding your hand and making it obvious which one to kind of choose and go from there. So I didn't like the way they made you select a stop from a zipline. I prefer to select a stop from a drop down menu, and that's kind of what we went with in the end. So I'll just look to get the link up where it's live. You just give me a second. Let me stop the share. Again, are there any questions as we're going along here then? In fact,
thank you really. Your competitor screens, are you building them yourself, or are you importing the images in?
Sorry, say again.
So your competitor mobile screen, are you actually building those graphics, or are you importing them in from somewhere else?
So how I did it, if has anyone got an iPhone here?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you used just a simple web screenshot.
Yeah.
If you screenshot, it depends what version of iPhone you've got, but if you screenshot, you can actually tap an options button and go to full page, and you can screenshot an entire page with just using the basic iPhone, the native function. So what I did then was I just airdropped it. Yeah. You can actually then airdrop that picture straight to your Mac if you're using Mac. Otherwise, just email it. And then you actually have the full picture. And then from that, basically what I did, I have these mobile phone screens. What they are, they're just a static image that I've got. And I just basically cut these graphics, make sure they're the same scale, and then I just put them on there, just copy and pasted. Literally, if I move this screen around, it would just be loads of little squares. Like they are proper graphics from other people's websites, just lifted through Apple screenshots, basically. And I've created just this standard standard phone screen template. Yeah. And I'm always make sure I have a maximum of 5 a page if I can help it. So that's basically how I've done that. And then it's just about layering.
And I want to also, people who haven't got the phone that can do that, there's an extension you can get for your Chrome called Go Full Page. And you can put it in, and if you decrease the size of your browser window to sort of mobile size, basically, click Go Full Page, does exactly the same sort of principle.
Yeah.
And it's not, very often a good technique as well is to actually, if you can bring it into your presentation, is to record you scrolling through the screen slowly on your phone. You've got that option on iPhone as well, and then you can actually export the recordings. Quite a nice touch as well, because you can show stuff in live situ. But no, again, the way that Ed's done this here, just keeping he hasn't gone for some high resolution latest iPhone or whatever. Nice simple diagram, to just showcase the actual detail and not take away from what it is we're trying to talk about. I think it's really effective here.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually touched on another point, funnily enough, and it backs up the kind of simple graphics, just generally speaking, for presentations, is it actually keeps the file size really low. So what I do is for these, I export them to PDF. So I don't share my PowerPoints usually. I share PDFs. Now the reason for that is it keeps the file size tiny. But also what's important is this is using the font of TFGM, which is called Calmeta. Now, not everyone has Calmeta installed on their machines. If I share this as a PowerPoint, it just becomes rendered in this horrific, what would it be, Times New Roman or something, or maybe Calibri or something like that, and it just crunches all of my work into like a mess. So yeah, if you can try and, for me personally, I found creating PDFs is better than just sending people your PowerPoints, because it keeps them exactly how they are intended to look, and it keeps the file size down low. Because most organizations, I think it's like 15 meg max is usually the file size that you're working with. So your reports are easier to share if they aren't 150 meg, and they take ages to even open on these NAF machines that most businesses have. So
a very good point as well. I used to have an old boss who would double click PowerPoints and would look at them through preview. And it just and he couldn't understand why none of the overlays or anything was working. And I'm like, you need to look at PowerPoint. And he goes, I don't get PowerPoint. I'm like, what? And it's just a nightmare. So yeah, absolutely, version control basically from any presentation, exporting something like PDF, double check it to make sure it's working fine, then send it across. And you know, then it's that easy for people to go through page 1, page 2, and obviously they can annotate it as well with all the techniques on and Adobe nowadays and Acrobat and all that sort of stuff, and you can annotate back and so on and so forth. But definitely that's a great bit of advice, that is.
Yeah, 100%. And again, your presentations are much easier to be spread around the business if they're not ginormous, so it helps your profile within the company as well if they can easily share your work. But again, I've come out with these kind of core principles that I had core principles that came out of our solution. I've got core principles that come out of the competitor analysis, and it's basically just my recommended steps for how we should build a service based on what we know. So again, it kind of backs up that don't use the classic timetable look. Maybe steal the zip line look for showing the stops, because that worked quite well. Add the user to add a bus stop, which is something that they weren't able to currently do on our solution. They were basically just select a service and then see all the stops. If you ask them to select a stop, that suddenly narrows the results that they are pulled back. Allow people to get a PDF if they want to see all of the stops and all the service times as well. Again, your search using a bus service seems like it was the most appropriate thing. That's what everyone was doing, is what we were currently doing. But also at this point, I recommended searching for the specific dates within a drop list. So that's again, based on what Mersey Travel did, I thought that worked really well. And it, as we spoke about before, stops us showing erroneous information to people. So that was super important. So I'll just stop sharing this now. I'll just look to dig something out here. But yeah, this tool is live now. I was just hoping to get an example of it. I probably don't have time to go through all of the design progressions, but I'll quickly talk about that now. I essentially used Azure RP. Does everyone know Azure? What Azure is? Do you want me to give a quick rundown of it?
I'm familiar with it. Don't know how many.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I'll give you a quick rundown. Azure is a design tool, but it's prototyping more than anything. So you can do glossy stuff in it, but it takes ages. It's not really meant for glossy stuff. It's meant for like, okay, we can do, say for example, a type menu here. So let's have like a form. Maybe it's first name, surname, phone number, email address, whatever. And you can actually build all those interactions. It pulls through into HTML. But you don't have to code. I can't write a single line of code, but I can produce a prototype that works and looks real, and that's what it's there for. So if you're thinking of a prototyping tool to pick up, Azure is super easy. I'm completely self-taught, never had any lessons or anything like that, and I picked it up in like 6 months. So it can be done. That's what I'm trying to say. And you can layer loads of interaction. You can do calculators. You can do everything. If you're good at maths, which I'm not, you can actually make logic-based calculations. Loads of screen animations. You can have call to action buttons that do. I think I've done like an animated loading spinner in it and stuff like that. So you can actually do some quite cool things with it. But I essentially made a bunch of prototypes in that of different styles, and then I remote tested them. So again, do you want me to do a quick rundown of what remote testing is? Everyone's benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So what remote testing is, so rather than us actually recruiting people to speak to and spending an hour with them, remote testing is, there's a few providers out there. We use Userlytics, but what essentially it is it's a panel of users that have signed up. I think they get paid like a $5 a video or something like that, and you can send them your link, and they can open it up, and they take like a screen recording of them going through the journey and feeding back over audio, and they're about 10 minutes a piece, but they're completely unmoderated. So they do it in isolation, the comfort of their own home. So it's good because it kind of replicates how people would naturally use tech without someone over the shoulder helping them. And it works really fast as well. You can get like 10 people feeding back on something in a matter of like hours usually. So if you can convince your company to sign up to remote testing really quick, really good. And like I said before, we had a really strict timeline on this. So using remote testing to see if the stuff we did worked was super important. What I'll do now, I'll look to find the link for this online to show you what we ended up with, because we changed it quite fundamentally, to be honest. Moved towards something new altogether, really. Mobile first. So if I just share, here we go. So can everyone see this here?
Yeah.
So again, this was super lean. Like I said, we went with something like really, really lean to start with. So we literally don't present the user with too many options. They get to this from going through to, they go to bus, then to timetables, and they get presented with this. So essentially type your service number. So does anyone get the bus? We can use your service number if you want. Anybody get the bus?
Not for years, but try 42 because they're quite regular, aren't they?
42. Right. There's a lot of 42s in Manchester, but we can pick the Piccadilly Gardens because that's close to me. So again, this is what we call progressive disclosure. So we show a user an option as it becomes relevant, rather than going, here's all the things you need to search. Just give them one thing at a time. So service, stop. So let's say you want to start from Portland Street. Okay, cool. It automatically defaults to like the nearest time that is shown. So let's say if we wanted to do, I don't know, day in the future. Again, you know, we talked before about whether we use weekdays versus weekends and all that kind of stuff. This is actually a specific day, like Mersey Travel did. So let's go for Wednesday. Let's go around this time, 9:05, and show bus times. Hope it works. Oh, it's worked. So we picked out the number of, we didn't want to just show people, okay, this is a bus at this one and only time. So we didn't want to just show people buses at 9. We wanted to show, I think it was the next 6 services after their time. So they kind of get a window of buses they might be able to get, because some of the buses are like every 5 minutes. So this was an important step for us to do. And you can see this isn't the same as bringing back a giant matrix going, here's all your stops. Here's all the times in the world. We're just showing you that window on that specific day. And you can see as well, we've got the bus number, we've got the provider as well, which is Stagecoach in this particular example. So for, you know, what we were saying before about giving out erroneous information, not knowing which bus service it is provider-wise, we've actually conquered that already just within this area. And let's say that you were like, oh, well, that's 9:15. Maybe I can get there a bit earlier. What's the state of play in that regard? You can press see earlier, and then see earlier displays the previous 7 times from that point. So now you've got quite a nice window to play with. This was a feature I've kind of lifted from Trainline. So if any of you guys ever use Trainline, obviously one of the best applications for travel ticketing and journey planning out there, for trains specifically, obviously. They have this function where you search for a time and you can just keep searching and keep opening, because all this basically from a tech perspective, they've already made the call for this information, they've already pulled this timetable, so this is dead easy for them to do from a technical standpoint. So we felt, well, what we can do is we can just allow the user to keep pressing see later and see earlier, so then you can have your breadth of that timetable, and if you want to go further into it, you can, without having to keep going back and searching time windows here. We also pinched this kind of chevron look for these stops. So now if you want to see the stops, you can. We didn't force people to select the stops. We don't want to show them all the kind of times that the bus arrives at each specific stop. But this 5:51:42, you can kind of see the timing it arrives at all these preceding stops from there. So you can then, effectively plan your journey. You know, if you're getting off at this stop here, East Didsbury rail station, you know that that's going to take you about 20 minutes, you know, from around here. So if you're getting on now, you can effectively plan that journey a little bit better. You'll have an idea of when it's going to get off. Obviously with buses, they're never 100% accurate, but this is the kind of expected scheduled time for that. But yeah, like I said, this tool is now one of the most popular tools on the website. Bus timetables was a big kind of pressure area for us because it's one of the biggest things people come to information for us for. Like I said before, 80 different providers. There's a lot of data in this space. So this is a way that we've managed to simplify an existing solution using basically benchmarking, some remote testing from customers, and also like an internal review of our solution as well on top of it. So that's kind of the whole holistic thing together there. I might be able to pull up some of the old wireframes in the background if someone gives me like 2 minutes. I might be able to see what I can dig up. But I mean, is everyone happy with that? Is there any other questions off the back of anything you didn't get? I'm happy to go over it again.
This is on Azure, right? It's not.
This is live.
This is live.
Yeah. This one is actually live, believe it or not. Yeah. Again, we've stripped it back on super lean. So this all fully works. But I did wire it in Azure first. I wired Azure initially for the animations and basically tested it. It worked really, really well. So we just thought, well, let's not overcomplicate it and create loads of new design work. Let's go really simple. Essentially, there's things that I'd like to do. You know, I'd like to shrink the H1 down there. As you can see, the search bus times label is massive. I'd like us to shrink that down. But again, this stuff, it's continuous development. It's not like, you know, you build it and walk away. It's done forever. For the next release, I would like us to maybe address some of these issues, styling wise. But yeah, it's just a super lean application. But it was Azure first.
Things for everyone to learn with it, with the continuous development on a project. Once it's launched, there's so much more you can do to it. So generally, when you do launch what is often referred to as the MVP, minimal viable product, the leaner it is, the cleaner it looks, the more scope you have to add things, take things away without ruining the whole sort of structure of something. If you're overladen with iconography, colors, panels, fonts, all this sort of stuff, and you try and change something, then particularly if you're working on design system, you're going to change one page, but you're probably going to break 14 other pages because you're trying to do something too clever. So keeping it lean like this is actually a really good way to launch something. Because not only is it obviously fast download, minimal page weights, not only is it nice and clean, it's on the white like we discussed, there's very little chance of actually disrupting any graphics on other pages should you make some simple changes. So it's a really good example of launching something quickly.
I do have one of them in Azure. If you just allow me to just share my Azure space, if I can find it. So this is one of the ones we'd mocked up. This is a bit higher fidelity than I usually go because this was like a bit further down the line. But you can see it is slightly different to the one we have there. We just went with arrows initially. This was kind of a look. It doesn't have the destination. It doesn't have bus number. It doesn't have the bus provider. And we decided to add those in, but some of these things should work. I'm not sure how much I've done on this one, to be honest with you. You might want to go over here, do certain things. No, this one's super lean then, to be fair. But yeah, this was how it had looked at one point. We decided to add more information because at this point, if you've already, I mean, obviously you know that it's 263 is Manchester is the destination, but once you scroll down here, it's helpful to have the bus destination, which is obviously what we added in the final one, because like we said before, some buses terminate early. Some buses don't go the full length of the route, it's depending on the time. So maybe the ones between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. Sorry, they don't go. They don't all go to, say if it's the Trafford Centre, they don't all go to the Trafford Centre. They kill the service at Stretford. It's useful to know that to help plan your journey. So yeah, but this was an initial version here. I'll see if I can find some other ones. Because it's been that long since I've looked at this, to be honest with you, but I've got tons of designs here in Azure. So yeah, we've done a bunch of different concepts early doors. So yeah, this was the first concept I'd done. So again, this is all completely just shapes and animations, no code behind it, but you can type in 263, that comes up, you can click that. You can essentially go down here. That was the idea of maybe if we had a map, the idea maybe that people could select from there, that would pick up a stop. Then they could select the day from here. They could select the time from here. So you can see how the design's evolved from this kind of really basic start point. Show times, that's initially how we thought, because we thought maybe we have an expected time, because maybe we're going to incorporate live information, which we didn't end up doing. But yeah, you can show maybe we incorporate multiple services that go to a similar location. So you get the 245 and the 263 that run on about 80% of the same route. Yeah, little things like that. So we the reason why the prototyping at this point with Exor was cool was that we could experiment and explore different ideas. You know, we didn't have to go down weeks of planning like, oh, well, let's have live information. It's more like, well, let's show what it could look like and if it could be of use. And, oh, you know, we didn't have to commit to the approach of showing more than one service at the same time. But we can explore it and prototype it, see how it looked, see if it works that way first, rather than building the tech and then having to rewrite the code and rip it out. So, yeah.
Ed, for this project, what was the team made up of? How many people worked on it?
So very dev heavy, to be honest with you. So it was me from both the research and the design standpoint. And then we had like 3 developers, again, because we would have had a BA as well, delivery manager, tester. But to be honest, because of the deadline, it was basically just me doing like a massive ton of work inside the first 2 weeks and then passing it off, obviously involving the developers in that process. They were really, really good actually. And then the devs basically took it and built it from there. But yeah, it's particularly dev heavy. I mean, if we're talking a more ideal team makeup, it would have been nicer to have someone with a bit more design experience than me who could maybe polish things up a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, you'll find a lot of these projects, the team makeup is kind of budget constrained is probably the best way to put it.
And who's signing it off? Who are you presenting it to?
So we have a PO, so product owner. They're kind of they're not in the exact day-to-day team as such. They kind of sit between that layer. So they kind of probably are the overall accountable executive. So we'd present back to Michael in this case our approach, and he'd say yay or nay for certain things. Lucky that he's really, really good in terms of listening to our approach and stuff like that, and has bought into kind of leaner UX driven stuff. But yeah, essentially the product owner is the one that has the final say. So if he said you're not doing this, then we don't. I mean, we were all for having the live times mixed in, and he just said no, it's going to be too complicated, so I don't want that. So he basically vetoed that particular decision and kept it all as static timetables. So which I think probably works, to be fair.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of prototypes here, to be fair.
I haven't used it for a long time.
Yeah, it's good. They've made a lot of stuff. They've got integrations with Adobe XD. So
it seems to develop quite a bit since it's about 5 or 6 years since I was playing with it. But it's improved a hell of a lot since then.
Loads.
I know we've done some user testing using it, and one of the reasons why it was particularly good for user testing for a particular client we use is because it has the, like you say, it's got the functionality to bring in live data to actually populate stuff, which is really important when we user testing, which is obviously a much stage further than anything that Sketch could offer.
This is it, and it actually replicates people in inputting information, whereas a lot of your other stuff like your sketches, your InVision, stuff like that, it's just someone tapping on a screen. So for example, if you're doing like a form, because I've used this tool for mortgage calculators and stuff like that as well, if you give someone a journey on Sketch, they'll go tap, 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 done. It's not really the same as actually replicating inputting information. It doesn't replicate the experience very well, whereas this tool does. This tool, like I said, because it's tactile, you can really replicate customer journeys from there. So I've used it for the whole we now have a self-service for the contactless trams where you can download your receipts and stuff like that and view all your contactless travel on the Metrolink. So I use the tool for that, and essentially, it's actually probably the best tool for quick mock-ups as well. So say if you're sat down with a couple of people trying to flesh out an idea, just drag and drop all of the widgets. So you say, for example, if you have an input field, you can just drag and drop that down, and you can just stipulate whether you want numbers in there or words in there. So yeah, I really recommend Exor.
I might have to dust it off and get you familiar with it again.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend doing that for sure.
No, thanks for that, Ed. That was really, really insightful and a really good presentation, and lovely to see how simple, clean, elegant research and well presented, simple, just 6 sort of key findings that you run forward with based on XYZ research and things that you like can actually go into a nice, elegant design solution. I think that's a really good demonstration of that. So thank you. Much appreciated.
Much appreciated, yeah. And to be honest, I think it's nice when your work actually gets built, because one of the things I will tell you is a lot of your stuff won't get built. So when you work on stuff that does get built, it's a jump for joy, trust me.
And also, you know, when you do something that gets built and it actually looks how you intended it to.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
I've been there before when I've just looked at a website and just gone, oh, I can't look at it. And then 6 months later, I've turned it on and just peeking behind my hands and gone, oh God, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I don't want to be associated with this. This is not how I designed it.
Then you can't put it into your portfolio. And you say, oh, God. No, thank you very much for doing also a relatively short notice. I think the group's all appreciative of it, and I'm sure they've all got a lot out of it. You know, I'm mindful of time a little bit as well, so I don't want to keep you longer than we should be doing. But has anyone got any questions I'd like to ask Ed at all in general? Not necessarily have to be about the presentation, but maybe about the industry or anything at all. As aspiring
anything at all, within reason.
Within reason.
I don't do vital statistics or anything, but yeah, if you want to ask about the industry, that's fine. Happy to help.
Just for me, it's good to see the reiteration of a simple kind of dialogue, really, because as Giles probably, I'm really graphic heavy, I'm really text heavy, and I'm just trying to eliminate all that until I get to the point where it's quite concise and succinct. That's demonstrated really well for me. I think the other question was the exit at the end. I'm using Figma at the moment, so how does that integrate? Should I use that? Should I use the Figma inbuilt prototyping? That's where
Interesting. So, to be honest, I've never used Figma. I've heard great things. I think I would always make sure that you can have a tool to call on that's really glossy for design. So if Figma does that for you, all good. I use XD for glossy designs, you know, like really nice artboards, super glossy, like very polished stuff. But I always think you need something that you can actually, that's a bit more mucky for kind of they call it quick and dirty prototyping, don't they? Where it's just like aggressive shapes and, you know, you're not bothering with the proper font. That's why I think you should always have a tool to call on that can peel back the gloss and make it actually replicate the journey more. So I would say that if Figma's prototyping allows you to actually input values, I would say that's a big plus for me. So I'd just experiment around with the limits of the prototyping tool. If it can get close to what the journey actually is, I'd say use that.
Okay, I think that's good advice. Having two different kind of tools in your suite is a good thing to do. Juliana, I know you're going to ask something yourself, weren't you?
Sure. Yes. In regards to accessibility, actually, Marina also wrote here. In regards to accessibility, have you ever thought about implementing like voice prototyping for people with disabilities? Like when I'm typing and searching for like my bus or booking for my bus, then I might not be able to see or type, or it's raining, so then voice prototyping might do a great job. I mean, it's pretty new in what I heard.
Yeah, it sounds super new. I mean, obviously, if I had the skill set, then yeah, I'd probably put that in. But I think, to be honest, it's interesting. I think the industry is now, it's split a little bit where the people that are really heavy with quality accessibility work are kind of their own strand. And I think that if I was to do stuff like that, I'd probably just call on their expertise, to be honest with you. It's not something I've got the skills to do. But I think as the world grows and changes, I think that those people are going to be more and more important on projects, and I think you'll probably see them come into it in the sense that they establish the baseline tech. Like I know basically most companies at the minute, they just look to be, I think is it AAA compliant is the terminology. They have a baseline compliance that they fulfill.
Most places look to be AA.
AA.
And it's like a battery, isn't it? And then
yeah, that's where I'm getting confused.
Players, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, AA compliant is the baseline, really.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's all interpretive and it's kind of really basic. I think that the as far as we go in terms of accessibility stuff, it's things like we make sure that we don't have text that's embedded within images, because what a lot of people do, they have like big banners or graphics and they just go into the CMS and they upload an image and they go, okay, well this is fine, everyone can see this banner. No, they can't see that banner because it's just a JPEG or whatever. You need to be able to, it's more the code inside of it is probably where we see that come into play. But if tools start having voice recognition, things like a wireframing perspective, then if you can learn that, go ahead.
Adobe XD has voice. You can prototype voices in an XD.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've done that. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Again, going to talk to just backing on what Ed said. I mean, very often you can have all these ideas, which are great. Just, and you can say, like, well, how do we bring voice into this? What does that then look like? Well, I don't really know. It's sometimes quite hard to get your head around it. So go and look in your network, go and look at people on LinkedIn, go and ask around and say, is anyone an accessibility specialist who has got experience in voice activation stuff? And people will be out there to help you. We did a presentation, a while back from Grant Broom, some of you might remember. If I had a question about accessibility in that respect, I'd just go straight away and ask him and say, what's your experience with this? Is there anyone you can put me in touch with that can give me a bit of advice on that? And then look to incorporate their advice, just so you've got that factual backup that you might not be able to bring to life in your presentation or your prototype, to say this is where we could take it, what we could do with it. Here's a basic visual, but it's not actually a working thing because we've got to work out the nuts and bolts of it. But I think that's good advice from Ed there. Okay, well, if anyone has got anything else, we can look to wrap up the evening.
I think Lacey's got a question.
Is she? Lacey?
Sorry, I have a sore throat, so I was like debating, should I put this cough drop in my mouth, or were you gonna like?
I've just seen there's a chat message. I haven't even clicked any of these, so do forgive me.
I always try to ask, especially of senior UX designers and design people, knowing what you know now about the reality of UX work and the UX market, if you had to start all over again from scratch in 2020 right now, is there anything you'd change or anything key to know, knowing what you know now?
Oh man, that's a huge one. Do you know what's really kind of, I would say for my younger self, if I'm being like 100% honest, is more from a professional standpoint, is just make friends with everyone. Like, even if you don't like them, like, because at the end of the day, I've seen people have these big like battle lines and divisions drawn in organizations, and they just become really difficult to work in. Whereas now I just keep my opinion on things very fact and data based, rather than like, oh, I personally think that this is stupid doing it like this. Like, now I'm much more like, oh, well, the evidence says this, so I would personally go with that. Or I've done this particular thing before at this company. This is what we did. This is how it worked for us. So I'd say for me as a younger person, when I was first getting into it, I think, just be careful of kind of how you speak. Like, make sure everything is super respectful. I think that being able to try and take the emotion kind of out of the way you go about having big decisions and discussions with people, you'll find you'll be able to work with anyone then, rather than kind of being too like, oh, well, this is kind of the way I like it because that's just how I like it. It's, if you can kind of, as a UX person, if you can find yourself siding with the data, you're pretty much always going to win.
Thank you.
I hear that. It helps you as well as a designer. It helps you check your ego as you go along as well. Yeah. Which,
absolutely,
as a young designer, and at times been quite hot-headed, has landed me in a bit of hot water early in my career.
This is it.
I'm a bit more chilled now that I've found more UX anyway. So that's good advice there. Great. Has anyone got anything else to ask? If not, we can let this one run its course. And thanks, Ed, for all his time and an excellent presentation. And let him get some sleep or do whatever he's doing.
The night is young. But thanks. It's my pleasure to speak to you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Check me out on LinkedIn if you want.
Yes,
always willing to ask questions.
And you will get inundated with questions, no worries at all. And
no problem.
We'll catch up in Manchester for that overlong beer when.
Oh, for sure. It's overdue.
Take care of yourself. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good. I hope everyone got something out of that. I thought it was really interesting. And I think the more that we bring people in who aren't necessarily specialists, but they are designers, the more you can just get a feel for the things they encounter and the problems they have to oversee and overcome and how they do it. And it's interesting to hear how he said about having Axure as a tool in your belt as well as a polished one, which is good. It's I mean, don't be overwhelmed when he said it only took him 6 months to learn. It does take quite a long time to learn Axure, but it is a very good tool to learn, and he's pretty well advanced in it. So you could learn to a good degree in a month and start getting something working quite comfortably. So please don't be overwhelmed by anything like that. So yeah, what we'll do, I mean, basically we'll wrap it up now. All I wanted to do was say that, echo what I said at the beginning of the meeting, which is that next week we'll have a bit of a session around this charity idea. And what I want to do as a group is to brainstorm stuff. I think that'd be fun. We haven't done anything like that yet. It's going to be normally just me talking at you all and trying to get some sort of input and feedback. We'll have some presenters. So it'd be nice to everyone to have a bit of a session. And, you know, what I've often found in my career, sometimes when an old company that I used to help run, we wanted to look at some new people, new companies to approach, and new business to bring in, and we started just brainstorming companies that industries that we're interested in, and then inside those industries we went away and we looked at companies that we felt had the same sort of value set as us as a company and would respond well to us targeting them. And once we did target them, we'd have some good chemistry with them, so we'd be able to do some good work with them, and then we could work out how then to go and approach them. So I think something like that could be quite interesting and could be quite fun actually, and we can all chip in. And once again, I always encourage you all to try and show a personal approach to something, like I have done with regards to finding your own projects, because once you're having a personal approach to something, you have an affinity and you have a motivation to want to follow that thing through. So yeah, if you just, for the period of this week, just maybe think in your head about some things that you might like to, if you had the opportunity to work on, well, what sort of charitable case study would you want to put in? And then we can bring that to the table and explore them all a little bit more. And by the end of next week's session, we could have a list of some things we can start targeting, and then who knows where that can lead us. I think that could be quite a good fun session. I will open up a Slack channel called Charities or something and start to natter away in there shortly. And I'm about to stop the recording of this now, and that again will be uploaded sooner than it was this week. I apologise for how long it took me. I think to last night it was 5 days, something stupid, but I'll try and do that today or tomorrow, and we'll all go from there. Okay.
Thanks, Giles.
As ever, anyone wants any one-to-one time, come and give me a nudge. I'm available for the next couple of days, and then I start my job on Monday, so I'll be starting a bit more limited from then. But yeah, just give me a nudge, and I think everyone's in a good position now. I think everyone's, apart from Josie, I think and Laura have had the briefing session. Chris, have we gone through a brief yet? I can't remember now. No, that look probably implies no.
We were talking about my presentation and getting that up to scratch.
Okay, well, I'll try and organise a briefing session with it, and maybe try and do 3 birds with 1 stone.
Sorry to interrupt, what's a briefing session?
Well, we've been talking about the project that we're going to start working on, Josie, yeah? And they're coming up with an idea for a project that you might want to look at.
Right.
And the first stage of that is writing a design brief to explore your idea and get some. So the session, I should have been more clear, shouldn't I? The session really is just going through the design brief and demonstrating how that can interrogate your idea. I had a similar, well, I had the session last night with Lacey, actually, it went quite well. So I'd like to do a similar thing, just so you can start thinking about sort of a project that you might want to work on. It's all optional, of course. The idea when I set the group up originally, it was all about this, coming up with this project. But if no one wants to do a project, it's not a problem at all. You can just be in it for the group to actually, you know, just get some community support and learn more things. I'm happy with that as well. Anyway, I'll let you all go. It's getting late, and good to see you all again, and hopefully see all of you next Tuesday. As ever, if you can't make it, just please let me know so I know who to expect and who not to expect. It's not like I'm holding a register there and putting black mask and saying my name or anything like that. All right?
Great. Thanks very much, Giles. Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys, see you.
Bye.
See ya.
Everyone.